The Valorian warship Crimson Blade was dying. Its engines had gone silent 3 hours ago. Its weapons were nothing but melted metal now. The great ship that had once carried 600 warriors into battle now drifted through space like a broken toy, surrounded by the remains of the fleet it had once belonged to. Commander Dexren stood on the bridge and watched the human vessel approach. The Terran ship was massive, easily twice the size of his own. Its hull was covered in scorch marks and battle damage, but it was still very much alive. Its engines glowed bright blue. Its weapons were pointed directly at the Crimson Blade. Around Dexren, his surviving crew waited in silence. 312 souls. That was all that remained of his once proud complement. The rest had died in the battle, or in the battles before this one. 6 cycles of war had taken everything from them. Lieutenant Kira looked up from her damaged console. She was young, barely past her first century, with pale blue skin that had gone almost white with fear. Her 4 eyes were wide and wet with tears she was trying very hard not to shed. "Commander," she said, her voice shaking, "the humans are demanding our surrender. Full unconditional terms. They say if we do not respond in 10 minutes, they will destroy us." Dexren closed his 4 eyes and took a deep breath. The air on the bridge was thin and cold. Life support was failing. Even if the humans did nothing, his crew would be dead within a day. But that was not the real reason for his fear. He had heard the stories. Every species in the known galaxy had stories about the humans. They were young, these humans. Their civilization was barely 3,000 years old. They had only discovered faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. By the standards of the galaxy, they were children, but they were children who had learned to fight. The Valorian Empire had thought the humans would be easy prey. A young species, still finding its way in the galaxy. Their military was small. Their territory was limited. They had seemed like the perfect target for expansion. The Empire had been wrong. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the old rules of warfare that had governed galactic conflict for 1,000,000 years. They were creative. They were relentless. They adapted and evolved with every battle. And they never, ever gave up. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what they did to their enemies after the fighting was done. Dexren had heard about the human prisoner camps. He had heard about the interrogations. He had heard about the experiments. Every species that had ever fought the humans and lost had their own horror stories. The humans smiled while they hurt you, the story said. They pretended to be kind before they showed you what they really were, and the Valorians had done terrible things to the humans. Dexren had not been at the massacre of New Haven. He had been fighting on the front lines, ship to ship, soldier to soldier. But he knew what his empire had done. 12,000 human civilians dead. Women and children slaughtered in their homes. Schools burned with students still inside. The humans would want revenge for that. The humans would make every Valorian prisoner pay for what had been done. "Commander?" Kira asked again. "What should I tell them?" Dexren opened his eyes and looked at his crew. They were all watching him. Some were soldiers who had fought beside him for decades. Others were young recruits who had never seen battle before being assigned to his ship. All of them were terrified. He thought about fighting. For a moment, he considered ordering his crew to resist. They could die with honor instead of surrendering to whatever horrors awaited them. It would be quick. It would be clean. It would be better than what the humans had planned. But then, he looked at the young ones. The ones who had never asked for this war. The ones who had been conscripted from their homes and forced to fight. They deserved a chance to live, even if that life was going to be filled with pain. "Tell them we accept," Dexren said quietly. "Full unconditional surrender. All hands, prepare for boarding. There will be no resistance." Anyone who raises a weapon against the humans will answer to me." A low murmur went through the bridge crew. Some of them looked relieved. Others looked even more frightened. One young male in the back began to cry softly. Kira transmitted the surrender message. A moment later, she looked up with something like hope in her eyes. "They acknowledged, Commander. They say they will dock in 15 minutes. They say we should gather all personnel in the main cargo bay." "Then that is what we will do," Dexron said. He stood up straight and tried to look brave. He was their commander. Even now, even at the end, he had to be strong for them. "All hands, move to the cargo bay. Walk with dignity. We are still Valorians. We will face whatever comes with our heads held high." The walk through the ship was long and silent. Everywhere Dexron looked, he saw damage. Holes in the walls where weapons fire had punched through. Scorch marks from fires that had been barely contained. Bodies that had been covered with sheets, but not yet moved. His crew walked past it all without speaking. Some of them held hands. Others whispered prayers to gods that Dexron had stopped believing in years ago. A few of the older soldiers walked with their backs straight and their eyes forward, refusing to show fear. When they reached the cargo bay, Dexron organized his crew into neat rows. If they were going to be prisoners, they would at least be organized prisoners. They would show the humans that Valorians knew how to follow orders. The minutes passed slowly. The cargo bay was cold and dark, lit only by emergency lights that flickered every few seconds. The ship groaned around them as damaged systems continued to fail. Then they heard it. The sound of the docking clamps engaging. Metal grinding against metal. The hiss of air as the airlock pressurized. Dexron took his place at the front of his crew. If the humans wanted to start with someone, they could start with him. He was the commander. He was responsible. Whatever happened to his people, he would face it first. The airlock doors began to open. Bright light spilled into the cargo bay, forcing the Valorians to shield their eyes. Through the glare, Dexron could see figures moving. Human figures. They were carrying weapons. "This is it," he thought. "This is where we learn what kind of monsters the humans really are." The airlock doors finished opening, and the humans marched in. Captain Daniel Hayes was the first human through the airlock. He was a tall man with short gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His uniform was clean and pressed despite the battle that had just ended. His boots clicked against the metal deck as he walked out. Behind him came his security team. 20 soldiers in heavy winter coats, carrying rifles that hummed with energy. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out along the walls of the cargo bay, taking up positions that covered every angle. Daniel looked at the Valorian prisoners. 300 of them, standing in neat rows, their pale blue faces turned toward him. Their 4 eyes watched his every move. He could see the fear in them. It was so thick he could almost taste it. Good. A small voice in his head whispered, "Let them be afraid. After what they did to New Haven, they deserve to be afraid." He pushed that voice down. That voice had been getting louder since the war began. Since he had seen the images from New Haven. Since he had learned about his cousin and her children. That voice wanted blood. That voice wanted revenge. But that voice was not who Daniel Hayes wanted to be. Sergeant Maria Reyes came up beside him. She was a short woman with dark hair and hard eyes. She had lost her brother at New Haven. She had more reason than most to hate the aliens standing in front of them. "Captain," she said quietly, "they're all accounted for. 312 prisoners. No weapons detected. They followed all our instructions. Any wounded?" "About 40. Most of them are in the back rows. Burns, mostly. A few with broken bones. One who looks like he might not make it through the night." Daniel nodded. "Get the medical teams ready. I want the wounded treated first." Maria's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, you heard me. Get the medical teams in here. These people need help, and we're going to give it to them." He saw the conflict in her face. She wanted to argue. She wanted to remind him of what these aliens had done to her brother. But she was a professional, and she followed orders. "Yes, sir," she said, and moved away to relay his commands. Daniel walked toward the front row of prisoners. The alien who stood there was taller than the others, with darker blue skin and a posture that spoke of authority. This had to be the commander. The alien watched him approach. His 4 eyes were steady, but Daniel could see the slight tremble in his hands. He was trying to be brave for his crew. Daniel could respect that. "I am Captain Daniel Hayes," he said. His voice was clear and calm. "Commander of the Terran Federation vessel Constellation. You are now prisoners of war under Terran jurisdiction." The alien commander bowed his head. "I am Commander Dexrin of the Valorian warship Crimson Blade. My crew will submit to whatever fate you have decided for us." Daniel noticed how the alien's voice shook slightly on the last words. He was expecting the worst. They all were. "Under the Geneva Conventions," Daniel continued, "you are entitled to humane treatment, adequate food, clean water, and medical care. Any member of my crew who violates these rights will face court-martial." The alien commander's head snapped up. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, which Daniel had learned was a sign of confusion among the Valorians. "I do not understand," Dexrin said slowly. "What is this Geneva?" "It's a city on Earth. Long ago, our people created rules about how prisoners of war should be treated. Those rules protect you now. Rules that protect your enemies?" "Yes." The alien commander stared at him for a long moment. Daniel could see his mind working, trying to understand. The Valorians had no such rules. In their culture, prisoners were property. They could be done with as the captor pleased. "Why?" Dexrin finally asked. "Why would you create such rules?" Daniel thought about how to answer. He thought about the history of his species, the wars they had fought among themselves, the terrible things they had done to each other before they learned better, the camps and the massacres and the horrors that still haunted human memory centuries later. "Because we learned what happens when such rules don't exist," he said. "We learned what we are capable of becoming, and we decided to be something else." He turned to face the rest of the prisoners. They were all watching him now, their fear slowly changing to something else. Confusion, maybe, or the first faint stirrings of hope. "Listen to me carefully," Daniel said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "You are prisoners of war. You will be treated fairly. You will be given food and water and medical care. You will not be tortured. You will not be executed. You will be held until this war ends, and then you will be returned to your people." A murmur went through the crowd. Some of the Valorians looked at each other. Others simply stared at him like he was speaking a language they couldn't understand. "There will be some of you who are tried for war crimes," Daniel continued. "Those who gave orders that violated the laws of war. Those who personally committed atrocities. They will face justice. But justice is not the same as revenge. And the innocent will not be punished for the guilty." He paused, looking out at the sea of blue faces. Many of them had tears running down their cheeks now. They had expected death or torture. They had expected to pay for the sins of their empire with their own blood. Instead, they were being offered something they had never imagined possible: mercy. Corporal Ben Tucker approached Daniel. He was a young man, barely 25, with red hair and freckles. He had been on the Constellation for 2 years, and this was his first major engagement. "Captain," he said quietly, "medical teams are ready, and the supplies are in position. Are we still going with the plan?" Daniel looked at his watch. December 25th, 2287. Christmas Day. He had spent the last 3 days preparing for this. While his crew had been fighting the battle, while lives had been lost and ships had been destroyed, he had also been thinking about what would happen after. He had been thinking about his grandmother and the stories she used to tell him about a war on Earth centuries ago. A war where enemies had stopped fighting on Christmas Day to sing songs and exchange gifts. He had been thinking about what it meant to be human. "Yes," he said to Ben. "We're going with the plan. Get everyone in position." Ben nodded and hurried away. Daniel turned back to face the prisoners. They were still watching him, still waiting to see what would happen next. He took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. "Open your coats." Commander Dex Wren did not understand what was happening. The human captain had given an order. "Open your coats." The words made no sense. What did coats have to do with anything? Was this some kind of human ritual before the torture began? He watched as the human soldiers reached into their heavy winter garments. Their hands disappeared inside the thick fabric. Dex Wren tensed, waiting for them to pull out weapons. Waiting for the pain to begin. But they did not pull out weapons. They pulled out packages, small boxes wrapped in colorful paper. Bags filled with objects that Dex Wren could not identify. Containers that steamed with warmth. The soldiers were smiling as they moved among the prisoners, holding out these strange items like offerings. Dex Wren stood frozen in place. His mind could not process what he was seeing. This had to be a trick. Some cruel human game designed to raise their hopes before crushing them. A young human female approached him. She had short brown hair and dark eyes that held a strange sadness. The name on her uniform said Martinez. She was carrying a small package wrapped in red and green paper. "Merry Christmas, Commander," she said, and held out the package. Dex Wren did not move. He stared at the package like it was a poisonous creature. "What is this?" he asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "It's a gift," Martinez said. "Today is Christmas. It's a holiday for our people. We give presents to each other." "You give presents to your enemies?" "We give presents to everyone, even strangers, even enemies." Dex Wren looked around the cargo bay. His crew was receiving similar packages. Some of them had already opened theirs and were staring at the contents with blank, confused expressions. He saw blankets being unfolded. He saw warm clothing being handed out. He saw containers of food being distributed. This could not be real. This was not how war worked. This was not how prisoners were treated. "Take it," Martinez said gently. "It's okay. There's no trick. It's just a gift." Slowly, with hands that trembled badly, Dex Wren took the package. The paper was soft under his claws. It was decorated with images of trees and stars and strange creatures he did not recognize. "You open it," Martinez explained. "Just tear the paper off." Dex Wren looked at the package for a long moment. Then, carefully, he tore the paper away. Inside was a small book with a leather cover. He opened it and found blank pages. "It's a journal," Martinez said, "for writing down your thoughts. Being a prisoner is hard. Sometimes it helps to write things down." Dex Wren clutched the journal to his chest. He did not know why, but his eyes were suddenly full of tears. He had spent 6 cycles fighting this war. He had killed humans. He had watched his friends die. He had prepared himself for the worst possible fate at the hands of these enemies, and they had given him a book. Across the cargo bay, he could hear his crew reacting to their own gifts. Some were crying. Others were laughing, though Dex Wren suspected they did not fully understand why. The sound of paper being torn filled the air, mixed with the low murmur of human voices explaining what each gift was. Lieutenant Kira appeared beside him. She was holding a thick blanket in one arm and a box of something sweet-smelling in the other. Tears were streaming freely down her face. "Commander," she whispered, "they gave me cake. The humans gave me cake. And this blanket is so soft. Why would they do this? Why would they give us these things?" Dexran shook his head. "I do not know." He looked around for Captain Hayes and found him near the back of the cargo bay. The human captain was kneeling beside one of the wounded Valorians. A medical team was treating the soldier's injuries while Hayes held his hand and spoke to him in a calm, reassuring voice. Dexran walked toward them, still clutching his journal. His legs felt weak. His heart was beating too fast. He felt like the entire universe had shifted beneath his feet, and he no longer knew which way was up. Hayes looked up as he approached. The human captain's face was tired but kind. "Your soldier will be fine," Hayes said. "The burns are serious, but our doctors can treat them. He'll need to stay in our medical bay for a few weeks, but he'll make a full recovery. Why are you doing this?" Dexran asked. The question burst out of him before he could stop it. "We are your enemies. We killed your people. We destroyed your colony. 12,000 of your people died because of us." Hayes stood up slowly. His expression changed, becoming harder. Dexran saw pain in his eyes, deep and raw. "I know exactly how many died at New Haven," Hayes said quietly. "I know because my cousin was one of them. She and her 3 children. They were at their home when your soldiers came." Dexran felt his stomach drop. He wanted to look away, but could not. "So yes," Hayes continued, "I have every reason to hate you. I have every reason to want revenge. There are people in my crew who would gladly hurt every one of you for what was done. Then why don't they?" Dexran whispered. Hayes was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because we made a choice a long time ago. Our species has a dark history, Commander. We have done terrible things to each other. We have built camps and killed millions. We have tortured and murdered and destroyed. We know exactly what kind of monsters we can become." He gestured around the cargo bay, at the soldiers handing out gifts, at the medical teams treating the wounded, at the prisoners wrapped in blankets and eating warm food. "This is our answer to that darkness," Hayes said. "We created rules. We built laws. We decided that even our enemies deserve to be treated with dignity. Not because they deserve it, not because it's easy, but because this is who we choose to be." Dexran looked down at the journal in his hands. Such a small thing. Such a simple gift. But it meant more than any weapon, more than any victory. "I do not understand your people," he said finally. Hayes smiled slightly. It was a sad smile, but genuine. "Sometimes we don't understand ourselves either," he said. "But we keep trying to be better. That's all we can do." A soldier approached carrying a large container. Steam rose from it, filling the air with a warm, savory smell. "This is soup," Hayes said. "Vegetable-based. We checked your dietary requirements. Your people should eat. You've had a very long day." Dexran accepted the container. It was warm against his cold claws. "Thank you," he said. The words felt strange on his tongue. He had never imagined saying them to a human. "You're welcome," Hayes replied. "Now go take care of your crew. That's what commanders do." Dexran nodded slowly. He turned and walked back to his people, carrying soup in one hand and a journal in the other. Around him, the cargo bay was transforming. What had started as a place of fear was becoming something else entirely. It was becoming, against all odds, a place of hope. The days that followed were unlike anything the Valorian prisoners had ever experienced. They were moved to a special section of the constellation that had been prepared for them. Each prisoner was given their own small room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. The rooms were not luxurious, but they were clean and warm and private. Commander Dexran had been given slightly larger quarters, because of his rank. He spent the first night sitting on his bed, staring at the walls, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Surely this kindness was temporary. Surely the humans would show their true nature eventually. But the next morning, a soldier knocked on his door and brought him breakfast. Real food, not the nutrient paste that Valorian prisoners were usually given. There was bread and fruit and something called eggs that came from a small earth creature. It was delicious. After breakfast, a doctor came to check on him. The doctor was an older woman named Patricia, who smiled warmly and asked him questions about his health. She examined his eyes and his teeth and the glands on his neck that regulated his body temperature. She took notes on a small tablet and told him he was in good shape for someone who had just survived a battle. "If you have any health concerns," she said, "please let one of the guards know. We have medicine for most conditions, and if we don't have what you need, we can synthesize it. Why are you doing this?" Dexran asked. It was becoming his constant question. Patricia looked at him with gentle eyes. "Because you're a person," she said simply, "and people deserve to be cared for." Over the following weeks, Dexran learned many things about the humans. He learned that they had something called the Geneva Conventions, which were rules about how prisoners of war should be treated. These rules had been created on Earth hundreds of years ago, after a terrible war that had killed millions of people. The humans had looked at the horror they had created and decided to make laws against it. He learned that human soldiers were trained to follow these rules. Any soldier who mistreated a prisoner would be punished severely. The punishment could include prison time or dismissal from the military. The humans took these rules very seriously. He learned that the humans had holidays where they celebrated peace and kindness. Christmas was one of these holidays. The humans believed in giving gifts to each other, even to strangers, as a way of spreading joy. They had extended this tradition to their prisoners because they believed that everyone deserved moments of happiness, even in war. But the thing that surprised Dexran the most was the way the human soldiers treated his crew. They were not cruel. They were not cold. They were friendly. Sergeant Martinez, the woman who had given him the journal, came to visit him often. She brought him books about Earth history and explained human customs. She taught him how to play a card game called poker. She told him about her family back on Earth and asked him about his own people. "Do you hate me?" Dexran asked her one day. They were sitting in the common room, playing cards while some of his crew watched a human movie on a screen nearby. Martinez was quiet for a moment. She looked at her cards, then at him. "Sometimes," she admitted. "My brother died at New Haven. When I first saw your people, I wanted to hurt you. I wanted to make you feel the same pain I felt." "What stopped you?" "Orders, at first. Captain Hayes made it very clear that we would treat you properly. But then, I started talking to your crew. I started learning about your lives. And I realized that most of you are just like us. You're soldiers following orders. You didn't choose this war any more than I did." She laid down her cards, revealing a winning hand. Dexran had not been paying attention to the game. "I still miss my brother," Martinez said. "I'll always miss him. But hurting you won't bring him back. And he wouldn't want me to become someone who hurts prisoners." Dexran thought about her words for a long time after she left. Meanwhile, life in the prisoner quarters settled into a routine. The prisoners woke up, ate breakfast, and were allowed to move freely within their section of the ship. They could exercise in the small gym. They could read books from the ship's library. They could watch human entertainment on the screens. Some of the prisoners were given tasks to do. These were voluntary, and they were paid a small amount of credit that they could use to buy extra food or entertainment. The work was simple, things like cleaning and maintenance. Many of the prisoners volunteered because it gave them something to do. The wounded were cared for in the medical bay. The doctors worked hard to heal them, using advanced human medicine that was better than anything the Valorians had. One soldier who had been expected to die made a full recovery. When he was released from the medical bay, he cried and thanked the doctors who had saved his life. Dexron wrote in his journal every night. He wrote about his confusion and his gratitude. He wrote about the humans and their strange ways. He wrote about his growing belief that his people had made a terrible mistake in starting this war. One night, he wrote, "The humans are not what we thought they were. They are not monsters. They are not savages. They have rules and laws and traditions to protect even their enemies. They show kindness when they have every reason to be cruel. I do not know how this war will end, but I know that I will never forget what the humans have done for us. They have shown us a different way, a better way. Maybe, when this is over, my people can learn from them." 2 months after the surrender, Captain Hayes came to visit Dexron in his quarters. The human captain looked tired. The war was still going on, and Dexron knew that battles were being fought every day. "I wanted to let you know," Hayes said, "that we'll be arriving at Earth in 3 days. You and your crew will be transferred to a proper prisoner facility on the surface." Dexron felt a chill of fear. A facility on Earth. That sounded like something out of the horror stories. Hayes saw his expression and shook his head. "It's not what you're thinking. The facility is comfortable. You'll have more space, better food, access to gardens, and recreation areas. Many prisoners say it's nicer than their own military bases. And we will be safe there? Completely safe. The facility is run by an international organization that specializes in prisoner welfare. They take their job very seriously." Dexron relaxed slightly. He had learned to trust Hayes over the past 2 months. The human captain had never lied to him. "Thank you," Dexron said, "for everything." Hayes smiled. "I'll come visit you when I can. There's a city near the facility that makes the best pizza on the planet. I want you to try it." Dexron did not know what pizza was, but he found himself looking forward to finding out. 3 days later, the constellation entered orbit around Earth. Dexron stood at the window of his quarters and looked down at the human homeworld. It was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling across the surface. This was the world that had produced such strange and wonderful creatures. This was the world that had taught its children to show mercy to their enemies. Dexron pressed his hand against the window and made a silent promise. When this war ended, when he returned to his own people, he would tell them about this place. He would tell them about the humans and their kindness. He would help his people understand that there was a better way to live. The transfer shuttle arrived, and Dexron led his crew off the constellation for the last time. Captain Hayes was waiting at the airlock to say goodbye. "Good luck, Commander," Hayes said, offering his hand in the human gesture of friendship. Dexron took it. The human's grip was warm and firm. "Thank you, Captain," he said. "I will never forget what you have done." Hayes smiled. "Neither will I." And then the shuttle doors closed and Dexron began the next chapter of his journey. The prisoner facility on Earth was exactly as Captain Hayes had described. It was not a prison at all, at least not in any way that Dexron understood the word. It was more like a small village. The facility was located in a valley surrounded by mountains. The buildings were low and spread out, with gardens between them. There were trees and flowers and small paths where the prisoners could walk. Birds sang in the mornings, and at night, the stars were clearer than anything Dexron had ever seen. Each prisoner had their own small house. The houses had bedrooms and living rooms and small kitchens where they could prepare their own food if they wanted. There was a central building where meals were served, and a library filled with books in every language, including Valorian. The guards were present but not threatening. They wore simple uniforms and carried no visible weapons. They greeted the prisoners with smiles and helped them with whatever they needed. They seemed more like staff at a resort than guards at a prison. Dexren had been at the facility for 6 months when Captain Hayes came to visit. The human captain looked different than he had on the ship. He was wearing civilian clothes, and his face looked more relaxed. The war was still going on, but Dexren had heard that the Valorian Empire was losing badly. Peace talks had begun. Hayes brought food from the city he had mentioned, the one with the best pizza on the planet. They sat together in Dexren's small house and ate from cardboard boxes. "What do you think?" Hayes asked. Dexren chewed slowly. The pizza was unlike anything he had ever tasted. It was warm and savory, with melted cheese and vegetables on top of a soft bread base. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. "I think," he said, "that your planet has many good things." Hayes laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polite sounds he had made on the ship. He seemed genuinely happy. "How are you settling in?" Hayes asked. "Better than I expected. Your people continue to surprise me. The guards here treat us like guests, not prisoners. Some of my crew have started learning Earth languages. Others have taken up gardening. Lieutenant Kira is apparently very good at growing tomatoes." Hayes smiled. "I heard about that. The facility director mentioned it in his report. He said your crew has been model prisoners. We have no reason to be otherwise. You have given us everything we could ask for." They ate in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Dexren watched through the window, still amazed by the beauty of this world. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Of course. Your cousin, the one who died at New Haven, what was she like?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Dexren wondered if he had made a mistake by asking. But then Hayes started to speak, and his voice was soft and full of love. "Her name was Amy. She was 3 years younger than me. When we were children, she used to follow me everywhere. She wanted to do everything I did. When I joined the military, she said she wanted to join too, but she was never suited for that life. She was too kind, too gentle." He paused, taking a drink from a bottle of brown liquid. "She became a teacher instead. She moved to New Haven because the colony needed educators. She met her husband there, had 3 children. They were good kids. The oldest was just starting to learn to read when it happened." Dexren felt a deep shame settle into his chest. He had not been at New Haven. He had not given any orders. But he was still part of the machine that had killed this human's family. "I'm sorry," he said. The words felt small and worthless. Hayes shook his head. "You didn't kill her. The officers who ordered that attack killed her, and they will face justice for it. Several have already been tried and convicted. Others are still waiting for their day in court. But you could still hate me. I was part of your enemy's military. I fought against your people." "I could," Hayes agreed. "But what would that accomplish?" Amy believed that kindness was the most powerful force in the universe. She used to say that hate was easy, but love took courage. "If I let myself hate you, I would be betraying everything she stood for." Dexren looked at the human captain. He saw the pain in his eyes, the grief that would never fully heal. But he also saw something else. He saw strength. Not the strength of weapons or armies, but the strength to choose a different path. "Your cousin," Dexren said slowly, "sounds like she was a remarkable person." "She was. And I think she would have liked you, Commander. She always saw the best in people." They finished their meal as the sky grew dark. Hayes told more stories about his cousin, about his family, about his life on Earth before the war. Dexren listened and asked questions, and slowly began to understand something important. The humans were not kind because they were weak. They were kind because they were strong. They had seen the worst of themselves and had chosen to be better. They had built laws and rules and traditions to keep their darker impulses in check. They worked every day to be worthy of the ideals they believed in. That was more difficult than hatred. That was more difficult than revenge. When Hayes finally left, Dexren walked into the gate of the facility. The night air was cool and fresh. Stars filled the sky above them. "The peace talks are going well," Hayes said. "There's a good chance the war will be over within the year. When that happens, you and your crew will be free to go home. And what will happen then? That's up to your people. They've seen what we're capable of. They've seen what we do to our prisoners. Maybe they'll decide that humans aren't worth fighting. Maybe they'll want to try a different kind of relationship." Dexren nodded slowly. "When I go home, I will tell everyone what you did for us. I will tell them about the gifts and the kindness and the mercy. I will make sure they understand what kind of people you really are." Hayes offered his hand. Dexren took it. "That's all I can ask," Hayes said. "Take care of yourself, Commander. You as well, Captain." Hayes walked through the gate and disappeared into the night. Dexren stood watching for a long time. The war ended 7 months later. The Valorian Empire surrendered, and peace treaties were signed. Just as Hayes had promised, the prisoners were released and allowed to return home. On the day he left Earth, Dexren stood at the window of the transport ship and looked down at the blue and green world one last time. He thought about everything that had happened. The battle, the surrender, the moment when the humans had opened their coats and revealed not weapons, but gifts. He thought about what he would tell his people. He would tell them the truth. He would tell them that humans were dangerous, not because of their weapons or their ships, but because they had learned something that the Valorians had not. They had learned that strength without mercy was just cruelty. They had learned that victory without honor was worthless. They had learned that the greatest power was not the power to destroy, but the power to heal. The transport ship turned away from Earth and entered faster than light travel. Dexren closed his 4 eyes and held his journal close to his chest. He had filled every page during his time as a prisoner. When he got home, he would have it printed and distributed. He would make sure every Valorian read his story. And maybe, just maybe, his people would learn from the humans. Maybe they would see that there was a better way to live. A way based on kindness instead of cruelty. A way based on mercy instead of revenge. It would not be easy. Changing a culture never was. But Dexren had seen proof that it was possible. He had seen humans choose kindness when they had every reason to choose hate. He had seen them open their coats and reveal gifts instead of weapons. If the humans could do it, so could his people. And that, more than anything else, was worth fighting for. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Dexren home. Behind him, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. But the lessons he had learned, they would stay with him forever. The end.